Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Hong Kong content review. Shifting gears a little bit, testing the waters back into category 3. For one that I was quite interested for quite some time. I've heard very good things and I missed out initially and I managed to pick this up for quite a reasonable price, which is the Era 444 edition of Red to Kill. I'm not going to show you the back of this because it's quite explicit, but this is the version 1 artwork. This is the only version I can get. There we go. Show you the edition there. And this is, of course, Red to Kill. You do get the alternative artwork on there. I'm not going to show you anything else because there's a few explicit kind of actions in this, but for people that are familiar with this, you know what they are. This one is obviously released by Era 444. If you're interested in any of their editions, I would say always act very quickly because they tend to sell out super fast on their official website, and then scalper prices go unbelievable in terms of the pricing. And one thing that's surprising about this distributor is that all their films, majority of them, are actually exclusive. No other distributor is doing them. No 88. No one else is actually touching these films. So if you want to see these really rare uncut versions, Hong movies, with practically exclusive license at this point, Era 444 is definitely one for sure. It's definitely worth the pickup in terms of just at least seeing it in HD with fresh done English subtitles and with exclusive extras as well. Honest Vinegar Syndrome decided to step in on some of the editions. This is the only way to really check it out. So yeah, Red to Kill is definitely one that I've been very curious about for quite some time for quite a few different reasons. I've talked about Category 3 on the channel in different ways since I first begun the channel quite a few years ago now. Now, my first initial reviews were for like Erotic Ghost Story, Story Ricky, Robo Tricks, the first 3 batch of kind of Category 3 films I was exposed to in terms of the 88 editions, and I didn't quite get it. I still am constantly back and forth with it a lot of the time, and thanks to the amazing extra on this edition and watching the Category 3 documentary and having more exposure and seeing different types of Category 3 and what it really means, what it gets down to in terms of that rating, what it ultimately represented for Hong Kong movies during that time frame, I think is a lot more explorative and adventurous and risky and kind of shocking, and a mixture of different emotions that come from this kind of category that we associate with. And I've been definitely wrong on that, essentially. I first initially thought that these were just sleazy kind of softcore porn movies that were just kind of in bad taste, essentially, and that is still correct. Most of them are still very much in bad taste. These are very deliberate, sleazy movies, just very much exploitive in terms of sexual content and violence and tryout wars and all sorts that it dives into. And I think it's just kind of finding the ones that work for you, the ones that are going the extra mile, the ones that are really going, hey, we're going to let you off the leash a little bit and just do whatever kind of movie you want to do. And while watching the extras on some of these films and kind of checking out what these projects were about and how they're made, what the intention was, it's got more and more interesting, and I've got a lot more appreciation. I've understood a bit more what they were about, and they kind of clicked in the right way. Some stood on work for me than others. Is your own individual taste and what the film is offering you and what the film is ultimately trying to give you as an audience member. I'm bringing this back to Red to Kill after leaving some kind of context for you guys in terms of my opinion, where I stand in Category 3, and some exposure I've had already with that kind of cinema, that type of movies, and ones I've liked, ones I've not liked, really. This is directed by Bill Tang, who has done quite a few Category 3 movies, quite infamous for Category 3 films. His first film he did, Association, from a TV episode, Dr. Lamb, which I haven't got around to seeing yet. I've heard very good things, also very mixed things. I know it's quite extreme, especially towards the third act of that film. He did Run and Kill, which I have seen. I liked it. It was fine for what it was. I don't think it was like this big spectacle film that everyone kind of made out to be. The ending of the film is shocking, yes. I think it's the most shocking part of the entire film. The rest of it, I think, is quite tame for the most of it, but enjoyable. It's a nice, simple little concept film. It definitely goes to the extreme towards the third act. However, you kind of know what it is because it's plastered all over the material. Third film from this director, released in 1994, and I was curious about it for quite a few different reasons. One, based on a true story, which most of them are. I think the other 2 movies are based on somewhat true stories. Dr. Lamb's based on a taxi serial killer. I think Run and Kill is based on the husband in real life wanting to hire someone to go and kill his wife. It goes really bad. And this one's based on a true story, which has a disclaimer at the start of the film, which is interesting, which you can take one way or the other, of a real life case where a disabled person was sexually assaulted and the person who did it, the rapist, basically got away on the technicality that the person wasn't fit to stand trial, couldn't defend herself. Obviously, in modern day now, this day and age, I like to think in Hong Kong and in the West, obviously, we have DNA evidence. We have a lot more due process in place for that. Where I imagine during the mid-80s, going toward the late 90s potentially as well, that this wasn't really a thing, and people can be kind of dismissed and kind of being mocked a little bit. One of my favorite category-free films is Naked Killer, and I've said this quite a few times on the channel. I think it's a great film. It's just a really fun film. I enjoy it for its action, for its kind of sleaze factor, for its violence, for the back and forth chemistry that these actors have. It's just a great film, and I really hope it gets a Blu-ray release down the line. Now, that film originally was going to be a straight-up thriller. They had to add category-free level kind of violence and nudity and explicit scenes to kind of get the film made. Otherwise, it's not commercially viable. And this is something that on the amazing extra on the edition, which talks about, let's just bring it up, world ratings, talking category-free with Arno Venema and Mike Leader. They really deep dive and talk about the actual breakdown of the category-free, what it actually meant for Hong Kong cinema, what it meant for films, and how it got people audience kind of tricked almost to films that weren't actually category free, kind of slapped that label on there, and it kind of became a forbidden kind of symbol, essentially a logo, a very serious rating. No one can watch it unless you're specifically 18 or over. IDs are very specific, and films would start to cater for that rating to get bigger box office return and to get financing. And this is something that's explored hilariously and brilliantly within Viva Erotica, a film about a filmmaker trying to make an ordinary film but has to make a category-free, softcore porn film, essentially. Brilliant film also. And with Red to Kill, I feel like this is the same thing again, where the intention, I guarantee they went into that room thinking, we want to make a disclaimer film, we want to make a film message about disabled community, we want to make a film about these situations that do happen and it's based on a true story, and we want to make an actual film about it. Okay, you're not interested, that's going to be boring, that's not going to sell, we don't want to do that. Okay, what must we add a category-free sleaze factor into it? What must we really hyped up that fucking nasty part of the aspect of that idea in terms of a serial rapist, in terms of these acts, that are really horrible acts that do happen in the film, and we help sell that on the poster, we sell that on the trailer, and we get the guy who did the previous two category-free based on true stories as well. Okay, sold, you got a film. Now, I truly believe there's only two ways you can view this film in terms of Red to Kill. One, it's a sleazy, really disgusting, really insensitive, poor representation of the disabled community with the category-free kind of exploitative nature on, there's rape scenes in the film and the kind of over-the-top bombastic nature of a kind of serial killer going around doing crazy stuff, while having the backdrop of a disclaimer film about trying to create awareness about these types of situations. You can go into it thinking that, and thinking it's terrible, it's awful, and you hate it, and you can take it one way or the other. And on the other hand, you can think this is a category-free classic in the sense of it being a really well-told film for an hour and a half, excellently well performed, cinematography is on point, the pacing's on point, it does go bombastic, it does go crazy, it does go full category-free, it does have explicit scenes, but it's done in a way that is almost mirroring a Western kind of approach movies in terms of Maniac, in terms of almost Norman Bates on acid. And you can see it as a message-based movie that does have actual good performances, that does have surprising amount of heart, that does have good representation if you like those performances in terms of the disabled community, and creating awareness of that while also being a hardcore category-free rape revenge movie and all the bells and whistles of that within that bonkers third act. You'll be right on both, and your opinion is valid whether you think. I actually really enjoyed this film, and I have seen the extreme version of this type of idea within Boulder Syndrome, and that film is terrible, and I hate that film, but people like it because it's so ridiculous, so over the top, and people like Untold Story because it's so ridiculous, so over the top, and it's based on true stories again as well. whatever your taste is, or whether you just want a madman like Anthony Wong going around, exploding bowler, whether he wants to create, barbecue buns, cannibalism to people, whatever your bag is, that's fine. I don't particularly like rape revenge movies, particularly not my thing. But I thought this film, Red to Kill, I thought it was really good. And I was pleasantly surprised, and I was glad that what directions it went to. In terms of the technical aspects of the film, I think it's really well put together. I think it's a good use of location, good use of creating tension, and really kind of having experimental with the kind of behind the glass and the close-up shots. The main kind of Mr. Rapist in this film is sweaty, you can feel it. I think the horror and the kind of the shock factor to the film is really on point, and it definitely acts more like a horror thriller in the vein of Maniac, in the vein of a more extreme version of Psycho. Essentially, that's what the film is, and it's really well paced, really well told. I think the performances are really excellent here, and I think they all do a really great job of creating a really horrible situation, a really exploitative situation, and I think it's handled to the right level. I think for me personally, I actually was invested in what's going on. I actually cared what's going on in the film. Obviously the more explicit, more nastier side of the stuff is horrible. It's there. It's deliberately, indulging into that. But at the same time, I like the fact that third act definitely has a bit of a, we're going to go against him a little bit. I like that. The main actress of the film, Lady Chung Seok-wai, who is the kind of main kind of character in this, the disabled individual in the film that basically goes to the community. She's fantastic. Of someone in that kind of situation, playing a disabled person, playing a vulnerable person, playing an innocent, and having likability, having charm, having this kind of innocence about her. And I think it really plays to the film's strength and what it's trying to build up to. Obviously the horrible deeds that do happen, but I think her performance really kind of sells it. And you've got the social worker kind of backdrop storyline with her kind of giving up on the community. She's kind of like, no one's taking this seriously. I can't do this job anymore. I can't help these people. I can't help these vulnerable situations. And, she's in a position as well where she's kind of befriending her and, really getting invested in, her well-being and, make sure she's safe and make sure she's happy and looked after. And our rapist character is played by Ben Chung, which I've seen him in a few different kind of projects. He's kind of very familiar, but I don't think I recognize him straight off the bat. Definitely plays a very sadistic, very nasty, very damaged individual in this film. And I think he, again, does a really good job of playing this kind of seriously, troubled individual, this maniac, this someone who is muscled, who's sweating constantly in this film, who constantly acts like a 10-year-old. You find out more about him as the film goes along. I have this really unique kind of flashback sequence, which I actually quite liked and actually just serve as an interesting kind of, representation for what this red means to him and what the act of, doing something explicit to these women basically are, in a sense, what it means to him doing it. It's quite alarming and quite shocking and quite, upsetting, and obviously for the obvious reasons. But I like the fact that the film does go a bit more that kind of traditional 80s kind of cheese, where it goes, hey, we're going to have this most sadistic, nastiest, serial rapist, this guy who's exploiting the situation, someone who is taking advantage of these people and the system as well, which I actually quite liked how that was handled. I like the fact there is some sort of fair kind of process. It's kind of trying to show this kind of message kind of film within a category 3. And, I like how extreme they do go, and I like how they really kind of amp up that kind of sort of 80s cheese factor. There is a little bit of kind of, as I mentioned, pushback. There is a little bit of awareness, especially towards the third act, and I quite appreciated that. There is a sort of like a versus kind of thing. Some questionable decisions, let's say that, in terms of how some of the characters do react, really goes for it. And this actor does a really great job of just playing a complete maniac. He's not afraid to kind of just go for it, and some of his facial expressions, his smile is so disturbing, is so bonkers. I mean, even this this image right here, I think should say all of it right there. There is a choice in the film which I actually quite liked, but I don't think was a smart decision by our social worker character, where she decides to go completely in red. I think there is a potential So I think she does all in red, and she's basically trying to like mess with this guy and tempt him and kind of screw him a little bit. There is some sort of funny kind of jokes that could come from that, which I kind of found was quite good. And he's going completely insane. He's going completely bonkers. He's just like internally screaming. And this leads to the kind of the more bombastic and crazy kind of third act of the film. Probably not a good idea antagonizing and trying to pissing off a muscle-bound lunatic that's already established that you can get away with it and not have any form of kind of weaponry to kind of defend yourself. Not the best idea. Overall, Red to Kill, I think, is a really solid exploitation, category-free thriller that does borrow a lot from Western movies. I definitely think it's really well told. I think it's excellent pacing. I think it has great cinematography. I think it has a really crazy, larger-than-life kind of villain character, has characters that we invest in and like. It's a horrible situation. It's a horrible kind of scenarios that do take place. But I do think the journey going from start to finish makes it an entertaining piece for a horror movie. And today, this is meant to be a horror film at the end of the day. And I think it does the representation, at least from my opinion, quite well. And I think the performances really backed it up. And in fact, there is heart, there is some dark comedy in there a little bit, and I think there is some unique choices what the film has to offer. So I really enjoyed my time, surprisingly, with Red to Kill compared to a lot of the movies in this genre and in this category. So what are your thoughts and opinions on Red to Kill? Please comment down below. What are your thoughts and opinions on Dr. Lamb? Is that something worth checking out? Please comment down below on that as well. So meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.